Thank you very much. I would like to echo the comments made by other speakers and thank the iMig organizers for this wonderful opportunity to be here with you today. I would also ask, because of my advanced age, if I could have a gentle 10-minute warning as opposed to a rather aggressive one. So if you just tell me as I approach the end.
The timer will help you as well.
Okay. Right. I have been asked today to address the subject, the global asbestos landscape, past, present, and future, and I'm very happy to do so. Nearly 15 years ago to the day, a conversation took place which was to revolutionize the global debate on asbestos. It also changed my life. On that unseasonably warm Chicago afternoon, Brazilian labor inspector Fernanda Gianassi, I'm pressing the green button, yes, there's Fernanda. She was in town in Chicago to receive an award from the American Public Health Association. And as Fernanda very often does, she casually had this idea, which she floated to me and colleagues who were speaking to her, about holding a global asbestos congress with victims in Brazil's asbestos heartland. Little did I know where this idea of Fernanda's would lead. When this suggestion was made in 1999, the subject of asbestos was in most parts of the world still firmly lodged within the remit of industrial hygienists, occupational health specialists, and company doctors. At that time, information about the asbestos hazard and the machinations of the asbestos industry and the corruption of scientific, medical, and political processes by asbestos dollars was not widely disseminated. As a result of the proactive long-term strategy put in place by the industry, profits continued for years, even as the death toll mounted. On the 50th anniversary of the first International Scientific Conference on Asbestos, which was held in New York, it's fitting to remember those individuals who devoted their time and their energy to exposing the impact of asbestos on human beings. Their criticism of the magic mineral often brought them into direct conflict with powerful industry and political forces. And when I was thinking of what I wanted to present, I put together my list of 6 key figures that I wanted to remember today. On the top left is Dr. Eric Saint. He was a Brit, but he became an Australian, and his work was pivotal to our understanding of what asbestos does to people in mining communities. In the middle, of course, is Dr. Irving Selikoff. We don't need to talk about him. You all know what a great man he was. And next to him is Professor Hans-Joachim Wojtowicz, who's done a lot of work in Germany and continues to do so. The bottom left, I'd like to remember my friend Henri Pézerat from France. Next to him is Nancy Tate, who is a personal friend of mine. And I have to say that we still miss her and remember her. And next to her is Dr. Temio from Japan, who is still working with asbestos victims in Japan. So Fernanda's brainchild became a reality. The Global Asbestos Congress 2000, or GAC 2000, which was called Past, Present, and Future, very much like the title of this presentation, was a watershed moment in what has been termed the asbestos war. This was the poster outside the conference hall in Osasco, Brazil. And here we have some of the members of Abrea, the victims group. They were great, their work was pivotal, and they all came every day and wore their t-shirts, so they were very visible. And I'm pleased that there are a couple of colleagues here who are actually in Brazil for this event. I know Jock McCulloch is here and Sophie Kisting also. I hope I don't forget anyone, but we all have great memories of what happened. So as I said, this landmark conference was organized by the Brazilian Association of the Asbestos Exposed, Abrea, in this photograph, by the International Ban Asbestos Secretariat, my organization, or we call that EBAS, and our partners. And it brought together asbestos victims and campaigners from 40 countries to meet with trade unionists, politicians, medical, scientific experts to discuss key issues as we understood them and to explore the possibilities for future collaborations. As a result of what took place in Osasco, a multinational grassroots movement was born, the 21st Century Virtual Ban Asbestos Network, and it created the conditions and provided the stimulus for much of what followed. For 15 years, EBAS has worked with members of this network to progress the campaign to ban asbestos and achieve justice for the injured. The global scope of these collaborative efforts can be seen by activities which have been organized, literature which has been produced, and projects which have been launched. On 6 continents, EBAS and its partners have challenged asbestos propaganda at the workplace, in the courtrooms, in the marketplace, in the media, and peer-reviewed journals. Our work has been translated into several languages, including Russian, Bengali, Farsi, and Serbian. And here are some of the EBAS publications which we've done in collaboration with our partners. All of them are available on our website, which is on the bottom. And this is one of our latest books about the notorious Italian asbestos trial of Etchenit's Stefan Schmidt-Heine. It's called Etchenet and the Great Asbestos Trial, and it was translated, as you can see, into Portuguese, Thai, and Japanese. Now, this is a very busy slide because I knew time was limited. But I wanted to give you some idea of what EBAS has done. If you look at the bottom, you can see the blue dots are the conferences and seminars we've been involved with. The green dots are outreach projects and medical initiatives and awareness campaigns which we've been involved with or sponsored. The red ones are the exposés which we've undertaken, and the orange ones are collaborative media projects. So you can see in some places we've been back more than once, in other places we are yet to go, but we've been pretty busy over the last 25 years. So our focus has been primarily on asbestos producing and consuming countries, which is a logical and strategic decision that we made. But nevertheless, it's also important to address the asbestos legacies in countries which have banned asbestos. We all know there is no magic wand to right asbestos wrongs once consumption has ended. In Poland, a country which banned asbestos in 1997, the government has set a deadline of 2032 for ridding the country of asbestos contamination. While this might not be achievable, this target is something worth striving towards, and I have to say that the UK has adopted no such target, and it's well past time that we did so. An analysis of global trade data that I've undertaken for this presentation reveals salient facts about the trends in asbestos production and consumption and national policies. The basis of these graphics is data sourced from the United Nations Trade Statistics and supplied by the United States Geological Survey. Both of these bodies have reported difficulty in obtaining reliable production and export data from some countries, including Kazakhstan and Russia. Wild variations from year to year underline the unreliability of some of the figures. And although annual figures are interesting in that they provide a snapshot of what happened in a certain year, the more accurate understanding of trends is facilitated by doing averaging the data over a period of years. And I should explain, because a lot of you who know me would know that when me and statistics meet, it's not a happy mix. So you can trust these figures because they have been produced by the EBAS statistician, the EBAS mathematician, and my husband, David Allen. So I thank him for his work and hope you will find these resources useful. So here, I'm not going to talk too much about these because we have limited time, and I'm afraid of what could happen if I speak over time. So I will just show you the slides and say that they will be on the eBest website shortly, and I encourage you all to download them and to use them. These resources have been produced for you to use. So we start in 1950. You can see in that year consumption was about 1.26 million, and by far the biggest user was the United States. By 1980, things had changed. Production was 4.7 million, a lot of asbestos. I think this was nearly the peak, or about the peak. And the biggest user was the USSR and several other countries. The other countries were 70 countries, and between them they consumed 25% of the total. In 2013, and this is the new data that we've recently obtained, consumption is about 2 million. And the biggest consumer is China, Russia again, India, and Brazil. Looking at production, back in 1950, again it was 1.29 million, and the biggest producer by far was Canada. We all know, and our colleague Kathleen is going to talk about Canada's asbestos legacy, but for decades Canada was the world's biggest producer of asbestos, followed by Russia. By 1980 things had changed. Canada was no longer in the first position. Russia had taken over, and there were still quite a few other small producers. Some of you may be surprised to see the data from Cyprus and Italy, but of course there were mines in both of these places. And now we can see that production is still about 2 million tons, and there are very few producers: Russia, China, Brazil, and Kazakhstan. Canada is no longer producing asbestos, and Zimbabwe also has stopped, but they are talking about restarting mining in Zimbabwe, which is obviously something we don't think is a good idea. So these are some of the other slides that David produced. This is where we average the data over 3 years. So, for example, the data for 2012 will be an average of 2011, 12, and 13. And by doing this, we've ironed out some of the ups and downs so that you have a more consistent flow. So here you see 2000, Asia was accounting for 53% of asbestos consumption, and by 2012, it's now 72% of consumption. And as most of you will understand, the control of asbestos in much of the developing world is completely absent. So this consumption takes place throughout their countries without any regulations at all. And here we've done some maps, which David did pixel by pixel, filling in the different colors so that we could have an accurate representation. Countries that are marked with white use less than 500 tons. Light pink is up to 2,000. Dark pink up to 10,000. Red is over 10,000. And green are countries with bans. So you can see this was the situation in 2000. In 2013, there's a lot more green. We've got 55 bans, and it's no longer just in Europe. It's all over the world. And when you compare the two maps, again, you can see the proliferation of the green countries, which are the banned countries. And I think it's important to say, we say there are 55 bans. What the Russian asbestos industry and the other global asbestos pushers say is, oh, well, if there are 55 bans, that means more countries use asbestos than have banned it. But the question isn't that, because a lot of countries don't use asbestos, but they haven't banned it. So here you see on the red, on the left, you have, in 2000, there were 66 countries that consumed more than 500 tons, and now that's 33, so it's halved. And the number of bans have gone up from 18 to 55. So we need to define the terms of what we're speaking about. We're not just talking about countries with bans and not bans. We need to look at who's using it and who's not. And again, this is a rather busy slide, but it's something that took a lot of effort to produce. And this, again, is using average data. So here you have the top, I think, 6 countries, and they account for 76% of consumption. And you can see that China is by far the biggest, but then India's levels are going up. Russia is tailored off in use. Brazil is going up. Indonesia has gone up. And Kazakhstan is lowered. And the next tranche of countries accounting for 15% of use, again using average data, are shown on this slide. And I know you can't take this all in, or probably don't want to, but if you do want this slide, you know, it's yours, and it'll be on the website. Download it for sure. So this, I thought, was a very interesting way of representing some of the changes. So again, we're using the average consumption, and we're looking at the Asian countries, which was a particular focus of this presentation. And the red blocks show you the increase in annual usage, and the white, and there is very little white, show you the decrease in annual usage. So it's very clear that between 2000 and 2012, China increased its consumption by 50%, India by 163%, Indonesia by, I believe that says 300%. So asbestos is big business in these countries, and the global asbestos lobby wants to keep it. So there's a lot of money to be made in asbestos. So what I now want to do, having quickly gone through that, is look at what's happening, what our colleagues in Asia have been doing, and I would really like to term this the Asian Asbestos Revolution 2014. So if we start with what happened in July, the 30th of July, the news was released that the world's largest maker of asbestos cement roofing, this is a former British company called Hyderabad Industries, it's now called HIL Limited, is transitioning from asbestos technology to asbestos-free technology. This is what the managing director said. Presently, our fiber cement roofing products account for 80% of our revenue, while the green products make up the rest, 20%. We see this ratio becoming 60 to 40 in the next 3 to 4 years. Now, obviously, I would prefer it to become 100%, but it's still very significant that they see the need to produce alternative products. And as India is the world's biggest importer of raw asbestos, consuming an average of 375,000 tons between 2011 and 2013, this is a very important development. Oh my goodness, okay, right. Okay, again here, research undertaken for this presentation shows that India has used more than 7 million tons of asbestos, and is increasing. So August the 5th, a letter was sent by the WHO and the ILO to the Prime Minister of Vietnam, urging him to ban the use of chrysotile asbestos in construction materials. Vietnam is an important market, and reports from Vietnamese colleagues detail intense pressure being exerted on government officials by industry lobbyists from Russia and Kazakhstan. At the end of September, the 7th International Seminar of the Asian Asbestos Initiative took place in Jakarta, Indonesia. Indonesia is Asia's 3rd largest consumer. Sponsors of the event included a great number of very important international agencies, and the participants were mainly officials from governments, various ministries from several Asian countries. So it shows you the support for this, which I think is important. September the 30th, at a meeting of civil society partners in Hanoi, it was decided to establish a new campaigning organization, the Vietnam Ban Asbestos Network. And this network will play its part in regional efforts alongside its partners, EBAS, and several other colleagues from the Asian Ban Asbestos Network and individual ban asbestos groups throughout Asia. Okay, you're going to wonder why I've got a slide about going to Brazil. Well, in October there was a meeting of the government of the Philippines and it was gate crashed by someone from the Philippines Chrysotile Information Center. And his name was Paul Roxas, and he tried to get the government to do a U-turn on its plans to increase restrictions for asbestos use. Fortunately, his plan was defeated, but in a trade union press release about what happened, they mentioned a visit by this representative and other industry people, also a politician, a Philippine lawmaker and his wife, and others who were invited to go to Brazil and see the asbestos mine in operation. So forget about the risk to your people. It's not important. Obviously, you have a trip to Brazil coming up. So this is our colleagues in Japan.
We're now in the red zone.
Okay? Oh, that's Japan, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I'll respect this. If anyone wants to see the end of my presentation, by all means come and ask me. I'll show you that. Show it. Can't go back. There was another guy from the industry gate crashed another meeting, and these are Korean colleagues who have been in Europe to try and find out more about how Europeans are dealing with asbestos issues. And again, this is a Russian scientist who told the UN delegates that chrysotile is safe. These are the Russian asbestos thugs that gate crashed our meeting at the Rotterdam Convention. This is a close-up of him. Just in case you meet him, you might want to leave the elevator. And I have to say, he doesn't much like the Kazans, and I think it must be something we said. This was the propaganda they showed at the conference. Asbestos is safe for you, no asbestos ban, and so on and so forth. And I will leave where I began. This is a picture of Fernanda Gianassi, the labor inspector whose idea was, we spoke about at the beginning. She was at a demonstration organized by our French colleagues in Paris in 2012. And that poster says it all: for a world without asbestos. Thank you very much.